Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 166. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation, Dave. 1 week from today, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be on the practice field, pretty much literally recording this after 10 a.m. We have an early morning practice, as they do for all but one of their 13 public practices this year. So training camp is right around the corner, Dave. I'm excited. How about you?
Oh, yeah, I am most definitely ready to start getting into this a little deeper here. I guess we're coming up here on the final episodes officially of this season, right? Don't we switch over the calendar to the next season at the start of training camp there? So that's coming to a head here. I'm wrapping up today, I think. At least barring the Steelers making a roster move or two here in the next couple of days, I think my 90 and 30 series is complete at this point. My last post went up, or at least I think my last post went up this morning, Jacoby Windman, and that would technically make 91 players in 31 days. So, not technically a 90 and 30, but everybody gets the premise of it. And I think you and I are going to try to knock out about 6 more players on the list today and go over those. And then I think we're going to try to save the final 7 for the Friday show. So we will have timed that up about perfectly with the start of training camp as well, too. Pirates and Yankees got a day-night doubleheader. So that'll keep at least keep us some interest throughout the day here as well, too. And yeah, obviously the big news, I think, as of late, ESPN NFL network kind of turnover, layoffs, if you will. And we've got training camps around the NFL opening up at this point, with the Steelers obviously reporting to St. Vincent College in Latrobe on Tuesday of next week. So this is all going to go by here pretty quick here the next few days, it feels like.
As you touched on, the biggest sports story right now are the ESPN layoffs that occurred yesterday and began to leak, I believe, on Monday. Ryan Clark, former Steelers safety, longtime, decade-long ESPN analyst, was among the most notable to be laid off, although there was some reporting it wasn't just about layoffs and cost-cutting, but ESPN's producers and network execs weren't happy with Clark behind the scenes with some of his choice words and the incident that he had with Peter Schrager last year. But Ryan Clark has been laid off of ESPN. Tom Pelissero, Carl Ravitch, and very other notable names have been let go as well. So ESPN, after merging with NFL Network, is now trying to cost cut and save some of that money they absorbed in taking on NFL Network.
Yeah, you got a lot of obviously high dollar guys there, McAfee and Stephen A. Smith, and was interesting to see Pelissero go out the door, but obviously with them no longer having to compete with Ian Rappaport being in the same building with Adam Schefter now. I guess Mike Garofalo, is staying from what I gather, and I guess Jeremy Fowler staying. I tell you, I don't like to hear about anybody losing their jobs or anything like that. But if I was part of the kind of reorganization, if you would, I think I would. Remember the old days where they would have like one beat writer for like the AFC North and the different divisions and all like that. It feels like they could save a little bit of money by going that route than bouncing the beat writer between, multiple teams and all like that. But it doesn't sound like there's going to be any beat writers, I don't think, out the door. Carl Ravitch has been around for a while. Isn't Daniel Jeremiah out at NFL Network too, or what? He part of that a few weeks ago?
His podcast with Charles Davis ended, maybe in part because Davis is part of the layoffs, who is certainly well-liked and revered, and we talk about him a lot during draft coverage time. I believe Jeremiah is still with NFL Network, though, but don't quote me on that.
All right. Yeah, quite interesting. I mean, look, Ryan Clark's you either love him or hate him. I think kind of guy at this point. I can remember a few years ago the whole when the you know I thought Ryan Clark was really good at bridging a lot of the, I guess, not dead air, but when Hamlin went down injured, and he talked a lot about filled a lot of the airtime there in the studio. I thought he did a real good job on that. I think Ryan
Mhm.
Clark does a great job on the breakdowns that they do. Obviously, become kind of a lightning rod with things that he's said over the years on, I don't know, First Take and NFL Live and several of those things, and then most notably, I guess, of recent, the whole thing with Peter Schrager and you never played ball before, kind of angle with that probably apparently upset a few people. But I think Ryan Clark will be fine as a whole. Yeah, I think he still has the Pivot podcast thing going on. I would imagine Ryan Clark will probably surface somewhere else. I imagine Pelissero will surface somewhere else. But yeah, quite interesting. I guess the list is complete at this point. It'll be interesting to see if we see any more names. But man, that's the nature of the business, right? And as I've always told you for years and years and years, and I've kind of said on the podcast before, there's a beginning and an ending to everything. So whether it be head coach in the NFL, whether it be a player in the NFL, whatever you want to translate that and stamp that on, there's always a first day and a last day. So
Mhm.
the shape of the media world in general, and television and ratings and money, and follow the money. That's all I'll have to say on that.
And the last add-on, and the last thing I'll say about this is it's just unfortunate, regardless of how you feel about Clark or some of the people that were let go, how they found out. Clark, most famously, was apparently told mid-show on NFL Live Monday because the word was about to leak, and ESPN wanted to tell Clark personally instead of him finding out online. But others seemed to find out online. It seemed like the layoffs of Ravage and others was known publicly before the individuals were made aware of that, which is just a terrible, business practice for ESPN to have these guys find out online or scramble last second or be pulled off mid-show to be told that they were being let go. That is especially unfortunate.
Yeah, look, there's no secrets in today's world, right? With the contact easy social media and the way things leak, and how secrets or news surfaces so quickly there. So shame on them for once you make a decision like that. If you're a company, you're better off just go ahead and delivering the news and cutting the cord and moving on, because it is a bad look, most definitely, for ESPN. Look, I don't know how you feel about ESPN at this point. I will watch, obviously, games on ESPN. I'll tune in to McAfee. Really less so on TV, I guess more so on YouTube these
Mhm.
days. If they have any kind of interesting 30 and 30, or I don't know, special or anything like that, I obviously don't really pay much attention to like schedule releases on there. And I we obviously follow NFL Live really at the end of the program and kind of recap that to see what's happening there. But I don't find myself really other than having it on as, I guess, background noise in maybe a four panel, which I'm looking at my TV right now with YouTube TV. You got the four panel up box where I have four sports stations on up here, but I don't even have the sound up, and I doubt I'll turn it up on the TV until I watch the Pirates game later today there. So I grew up with ESPN and Sports Center and NFL Prime and all like that. But we live in such a work TV around our schedule, and you can tape almost anything and watch it at your own uh viewing pleasure at this point in time. ESPN isn't obviously the ESPN it once was, and every a few times as of late during this off season, I've tuned into ESPN, and there've been like table darts or something like that on. I don't know if you've caught any of that yet.
Mhm.
But that's kind of where we're at with ESPN. What are your thoughts on ESPN now?
I mean, that's a broader discussion, and I'm sure people don't want us to go too deep down that rabbit hole. It's difficult in the, cable cutting world where I know some people say just get back to showing highlights and scores. And I understand that instinct. That's what I grew up on too. But people consume that in different ways, mostly through Twitter or social media where they don't have to go watch SportsCenter to watch that day's highlights. Now, do I love the hot take nature and the amplify everything, hear nothing method that ESPN and networks seem to abide by? No. So I don't know what the right answer is. It's a uphill battle, but yeah, certainly has changed and certainly will never be the same.
Yep. All right. I think that's all the people probably want to hear about that.
hmm Some other odds and ends, Dave, it appears, and although we can't say this with complete confidence until maybe a couple more weeks from now, it appears Kim Hayward will be left off the NFL's annual top 100 list as voted and made by NFL players. So another likely snub coming for Kim Hayward. He was left off the top 10 list of NFL executives for the best 10 interior defensive linemen in the NFL. And so Hayward has plenty of motivation and fuel to use for one of his final NFL seasons.
Yeah, I imagine we'll see a GIF or a meme or something about it. Look, they're on number 56, I think, as of this morning, and I think it's Jalen Hurts. So, I mean, we're getting almost to the top 50. What you would think Hayward would? What was Hayward's rank last year? Do you have it,
He was
handy?
83rd, and so I wouldn't expect him to be higher on that list and certainly not in the 50s.
Boy, what a snub that is! And obviously, we've questioned this whole thing for many years now, and how the voting actually happens, and how many players actually take part of it. And look, does Cameron Heyward belong in the top 50? Probably not. No. Does he belong in the top 75? You could make a pretty decent argument, I think,
Sure.
for that last couple of seasons. And I mean, he's still regarded as one of the top, in my opinion, top 10, defensive tackles in the NFL and all. So, yeah, I would consider this a pretty big snub. And I think still at this moment, Jalen Ramsey is the only guy that's been on the list so far, right? We obviously
Correct.
expect Watt, I would think, to show up here pretty soon.
You would think, but if players are prisoners of the moment with his down season last year, I can't guarantee Watt will be on there. It'll be crazy if he's not, but we'll have to wait and see.
All right. There's a better way to do this, and I know it's all off season. It doesn't really matter, kind of keep us busy type thing, but at least they got us talking about how Cameron Heyward doesn't appear like he'll show up in the top 100 list. And I guess that'll be if that happens, it'll be the first time since the inception of this, I guess. Is that
I'd
right?
have to look. I'm not sure what his history is. He got as high as the upper 40s, I think, back in 2021, 2022, but I couldn't tell if he's been on the list every single year. This list has been around for quite some time.
All right. Anyway, we'll wait and see if that's ends up being the case here. I guess the next one will be 55, because as mentioned, Jalen Hurts is number 56 overall.
Dave, with the World Cup wrapping up, there's been plenty of attention on the NFL and the push to use grass fields. In fact, players like Cam Hayward and Patrick Queen and other Steelers have made that call on social media for the league to mandate grass fields across the board, the way that FIFA did for the World Cup. But bouncing off of that, the Athletic's Jacob Robinson had an interesting study about which teams will play on turf the most and the least, and Pittsburgh has the fewest amount of games playing on turf this year, just 3 times. Week 2 at Gillette Stadium, which is against the Patriots, and then Week 10 at Paycor Stadium, which is against the Bengals, and then Week 17 Nissan Stadium. Is that Tennessee? I think it's the Titans.
Nashville, yeah.
Nashville, Week 17,
Yeah.
yes. So those are the only 3 times Pittsburgh will play on turf this year. Obviously, their home field, Acrisure Stadium, is grass, a new grass field being installed this year that will hopefully be more durable and hold up to all the conditions and elements and the Panthers and high school games getting played on it. And so for those who hate turf fields, and I don't want to speak for you, I think we're both like the
Mhm.
players, want grass fields across the board. This is good news for Pittsburgh.
I think as a whole, yes, but I think you hit on a good point. I think you put this in the post as well too, or Joe Clark did that. Steelers' own home field has what they received an F minus in the recent NFL players survey. There now it looks like as of a couple of weeks ago, they kind of changed up the turf, so we'll see how that holds up. But that field obviously gets a lot of usage with the Panthers and high school and all like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it holds up throughout the season. But I think just looking at it generally when it comes to road games, that's favorable in and of itself, and hopefully it will play a part in maybe fewer kind of field related possible injuries, I guess, if you will. Look, I think this all boils down to the World Cups thing, and the players being a lot more vocal. You would think with the CBA bargaining coming up here in the very near future, that will now become part of that. Obviously, on top of a higher percentage of the pay and revenue and those sort of things. If the players were smart, they would make this come up with some sort of universal type field situation. We'll see if that ultimately happens. I think we're going to start hearing more. If the World Cup can do it, why can't the NFL do it? That's going to be one of the major, I think, focuses of this thing moving into the next CBA. So at its core, and going back to the article in general, this feels like good news for the Steelers, but obviously a lot of it will depend on how almost said Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium holds up throughout the season here, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed.
Why do you think the NFL, maybe its owners, seem resistant to the idea of just using grass fields instead of turf?
Money.
And you say that because of the upkeep on grass fields is more expensive than turf?
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine that's the case. Yeah. Follow the money trail, as I
Yeah.
always like to say. And look, I imagine it is fairly expensive, but I think somebody put out something that the revenue of the NFL's of all the major sports and all still remains king overall. So look, if they want. If they want to truly level the playing field, if you will, what? Why wouldn't you invest in this? Why wouldn't you invest in the players being able to stay healthy and there not being any mystique from one week to the next as far as the playing surface that you're playing on? If it makes the players happy, and once again, yeah, it yeah, I don't know what studies there have been. I'm sure there have on grass fields. Boy, I mean, you just hate to see on the schedule a MetLife Stadium
Mhm.
or anything like that due to the ACLs and all like that have happened on turf and all like that. So once again, I think the NFLPA will make this a strong sticking point in the CBA negotiations upcoming here in the next couple of years. But in the meantime, I would imagine the players are going to make their thoughts known on this, specifically after the World Cup took place here, and we'll just have to see what the end result here is.
The question is, will the players and union keep up that energy when it comes time to talk CBA? That's still not going to be for several more years. And so they have to remember their feelings now and their hard stance on it now and be able to push and fight for it. And that'll be the key when that time comes.
Yeah, the problem is, and as we've seen over the years, they talk a good talk leading up to it and in the early stages, but as I've stated several times in the past, I don't think the NFL Players Association have done a good job sticking to their guns. The players with the money can make the loudest noise and tell everybody else to stick to your guns, but when you're talking about majority of the league, doesn't make aren't in the top 25% of earners in the league. Those guys want to get back to work and get the paycheck as soon as possible. And obviously, if that's the majority of the voting, they end up caving the quickest there. So we'll see. More times than not, it seems like the NFLPA has left a lot on the table, and gets kind of strong on. I think before anything really significant happens again in the NFL, as far as revenue share and things like field and kind of the minor discussions there, that you're going to have to go through another lockout. But this is a business, and once again, you got players on the bottom end of this thing that need the paychecks, that can't go a full season without that kind of stuff, and that's why I think you've seen what has happened over the last several NFLPA negotiations.
We will keep an eye on it and certainly want to monitor how Pittsburgh's new grass surface holds up throughout the season. That'll be something to watch for, given all the rightful criticism that it's come under really since Heinz Field way back when was opened in 2001. All right, Dave, over the weekend, I released my pre-training camp Steelers 53-man roster prediction. Obviously, still very subject to change with all the information we're going to learn beginning 1 week from now when Pittsburgh takes the field for their first training camp practice. So I know you're going to do your roster prediction in a couple of days before the training camp gets going. So I don't know if you want to spoil your roster or not, but we can kind of compare, contrast, and just get your thoughts on my latest prediction for how things will look for week 1 against Atlanta at quarterback, keeping 3 in the same 3 as I did right after the draft in my roster prediction, and Aaron Rodgers, Will Howard, and Drew Aller. Obviously, the big battle here is Howard versus Rudolph versus the outside chance of keeping 4 quarterbacks. It is still, in my mind, Howard's job to lose. He certainly could with a poor or shaky showing this summer, but for now, I will put Howard making it over Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I think I'm going to roll. I will roll along with you. I think I've said several times, at least with Will Howard sight unseen still at this point in time, at least to me in a Steelers uniform. I think it's his job to lose. Quite interesting. I think yesterday Mark Cabali says Mason Rudolph is a stone cold lock to make the roster. I know a few other beat writers feel that way as well. That's a hard statement to go against, though, right? Mason Rudolph is a stone cold lock. We'll see. At least in my head, I wouldn't view it as that, as an outsider. I guess technically overall here, but that's what training camp in the preseason is for. I expect Will Howard be given every opportunity to win the backup job, and I do think though it should not just be given to him. If the Steelers cannot come out of the preseason with a fairly strong level of confidence that Will Howard can be their backup, then obviously we might see Mason Rudolph in that role. Or if in the rare instance that the Steelers keep 4 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, that obviously could shake things up as well here. But going back to what the goal here is, which is to go over your roster prediction, I'm locking step with you with the 3 quarterbacks there.
And as we have written about and researched, although it may feel unusual to have 2 quarterbacks who have never taken a regular season snap in this scenario, and Howard and Aller back up a soon-to-be 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers, it's happened before. McCarthy's had inexperienced quarterbacks behind a veteran or starter type. This happened in Green Bay and happened in Dallas. We love our percentages on here, Dave. So what percentage chance would you give Pittsburgh carrying 4 quarterbacks?
Probably a 4% chance.
I was holding up 3 fingers when you said that. I know
Okay.
you can't see me on camera, but that's what I was going to guess you were going to guess. So, okay, yeah, 3-4%. I figured you'd come in pretty low on that.
All right. I'm not saying it won't happen. I've been hung by the tongue in the past before, but man, it just it would be so strange just in the landscape of the NFL,
Mhm.
and 53-man rosters are tough enough. Man, if we were dealing with like a 56-man roster or something like that, it'd probably be a little bit easier to map that out. But yeah, I'll put it to you this way: I'll be surprised if they keep 4.
At running back, keeping 4, including Riley Nowakowski, a fullback. And I have a change here from my post-draft prediction. I have Rico Dowdle, Jalen Warren, Eli Heidenreich, the 7th-round rookie, and Nowakowski. So Heidenreich on it, Caleb Johnson off it. And the more I thought about it, the more we talked about Heidenreich and Johnson in your 90 and 30 series, it just felt right where Johnson was drafted for a different scheme. Will he have value beyond a runner? Heidenreich already has clear value as a receiver, a special teamer. He's more versatile. Can Johnson get to that point? It'll still be a battle, still a wide open competition. Heidenreich plenty to prove himself as a 7th-round rookie, sight unseen. Travis Homer in the mix as well, but I think Heidenreich's versatility and additional value beyond being a runner will win out and get him the nod over Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I haven't put mine down on paper yet overall here, but I would lean this way as well too. Obviously, the lightning rod within this group here is Eli Heidenreich. Some beat writers are really thinking that Eli's gonna not make the roster and end up on the practice squad. Look, this guy's skill set, even though traditionally not used in a more traditional running back sense in college there, man, the way that guy was able to be used outside of that and his work as slot and as a receiver was just very impressive. Can really make things happen with the football in his hand. You probably look, the main discussion here is with Caleb Johnson and putting him in a room with the two Bobs and say, what exactly do you do here? And as we kind of went through with the 90 and 30 series, I really think we're going to have to see Caleb Johnson do something that he really isn't or hasn't been accustomed to doing, even dating back through his college career, and that's be some sort of an asset on special teams. And look, obviously omitted from your list is Travis Homer here. And if you were going to keep any running back because of his special teams prowess and asset and abilities and all, Travis Homer would easily get the nod over Caleb Johnson. Caleb's got a lot to prove in several aspects, not only as a runner within the Mike McCarthy scheme, but on special teams, and it feels like it's going to be an uphill battle for him. I think the only thing in his favor is the fact that how often do you see the Steelers really burn through a top 3 draft pick, if you will, and him out of the picture with it, before his second season gets underway. But off scholarship now at this point, I think when it comes to, we've talked throughout this thing about the 53-man roster and how there's a lot of different ways that this can go. I'm leaning towards going with you, even though Riley Nowakowski is a 5th-round draft pick, and because of that, not technically a lock. I think his ability on special teams and ability to function as a tight end / fullback will be enough to keep him on the 53-man roster if he stays healthy. So I don't know how mine's going to end up, but I'll tell you, it's going to be hard for me not to have obviously these 4 listed in the running back room.
All right, we'll look at your list whenever the time comes, but I think we're in agreement on our thoughts at the running back position. So we will move on to wide receiver, keeping 6, and I think the same 6 I had before: DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr., Jeremy Bernard, Roman Wilson, Ben Skoranek, and Caden Weegan. Bernard and Weegan, the rookies. Obviously, the battle between Bernard and Wilson and delegating roles will be the real training camp spotlight, as opposed to who will make the team, but could have other guys push in A.T. Perry, Max Hurlman, others we'll see, but these 6 feel like pretty good bets.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And look, Roman Wilson, I think it was at least a very positive thing. And look, I know other guys might have been invited. You never know what a player's off-season schedule is and dealing with, and who was able to make the Aaron Rodgers get together out west there just recently. I find it a big positive that Roman Wilson was part of that overall, or at the very least had the invite to go out there. Caden Weegan, we all know that he's a returner slash wide receiver. Skoranek because of his special teams ability, and and until given more of a reason, because look, I just wrote up Roman Wilson in my 90 and 30. He certainly has not lived up to draft pedigree and where he was drafted through the first two NFL seasons. Obviously, his rookie season was wiped out by that ankle injury. You didn't like it seeming like Roman Wilson and Aaron Rodgers were not on the same page together last season. I think I even wrote up, what was it, 4 of the last 5 regular season games last year. Roman Wilson was a healthy scratch. And he was inactive for the playoff game as well too. That's not a great trend to come out of last season with there. But I'll give him a mulligan, at least for the time being, at least until we get into training camp here. And I will agree with you on the 6, Ben Skoranek, once again, his special teams ability. It's going to be hard to keep him off the roster. And Weegan is essentially just your return guy who maybe you can get on the field for a couple of snaps on offense as the season progresses.
Right. Now, if Wilson loses out to Bernard out of the gate as that number 3, where is his value? Could he be a trade or even a cut candidate? That is certainly possible, but I
And
don't
he
see
gives you really nothing on special teams, if we're being honest, Roman.
Right. Could he get some work in the kick return game this year? I imagine he'll be in those lines, maybe even back up punt returner. So maybe there's a little bit of additional value, but not much, not to the level of Skoranek or Weegan. So that'll be the situation to watch there. It was nice and it was good that Roman Wilson, was invited to that trip in Wyoming with Rodgers, etc. But he was out there last year in Malibu, and that didn't exactly help him during the season. So what really will help is just the fact that it's year 2 for Rodgers and for Wilson working together, that Rodgers worked more throughout the offseason, that Wilson is really, last year was sort of his de facto rookie year because he basically didn't play his rookie season with all the injuries. And so that was him learning a lot about the NFL. Now he can really kind of accelerate and feel like a second-year player, so to speak, that can take that leap, that is not really, his head's not spinning anymore about how the NFL works and getting on the field and just kind of getting his feet wet. So those are the real things that could help tighten and create a connection in their second year together.
And look, because of not being a special teams asset at this point, and let's assume the running back room goes the way you have it with Eli Heidenreich making the team, and let's assume that these 6 wide receivers you have listed make the team. We know Weegan's going to be active. We know Skoranek's going to be active. You would think Bernard, Pittman, and Metcalf obviously will be active. You can only dress so many players, obviously, for a game. Roman Wilson, assuming he does make the 53-man roster, has the potential of being a healthy scratch right out of the chute, and specifically if Bernard shows a good grasp of the offense right out of the chute here in training camp on a preseason.
Sure, that's always a additional consideration, not just your total 53-man roster, but your active game day 48-man roster. And that's always a tough decision. And one other factor, if Wilson does make the team. At tight end, have a change here from my previous edition because of an addition signing the Pittsburgh made. I have Pat Frymuth, Darnell Washington, and veteran Robert Tonyan making the squad. I know some will argue and say that Nowakowski could moonlight as the tight end and the fullback, and Pittsburgh does not need to add Tonyan. They could do that, but feels a little light, especially for a rookie like Nowakowski. I think Pittsburgh will like the veteranship of Tonyan and put him on the roster.
All right, Tonyan is obviously the lightning rod worth of discussion when we get to this group here. Going back when writing up, we're talking about Tonyan today too, I think in the 90 and 30, correct? So I don't want to go too deep into this because we'll talk about a little bit about him more. Tonyan, although he has played some special teams, I don't view him as a huge asset where I think Danny Crossman would be in a bang the table type situation for him. Additionally, Robert Tonyan, I have never viewed as an elite run blocker, and maybe more so average in the run blocking department. I think the advantage with him more than anything is familiarity with the Mike McCarthy offense. Obviously, playing with having the trust factor when it comes to a guy like Aaron Rodgers. How many times do we expect to see three tight end personnel groupings throughout the season here, maybe as opposed obviously to last year or the time with Arthur Smith here? I think it's a real questionable situation, and I know you agree. I mean, you got to put people on this list. You got to create a 53-man roster here overall. Of all the people, and we haven't gone through. We've only gone through about half of this right now. I would imagine Robert Tonyan is one that you maybe struggled with, and most definitely think is a bubble player here.
I mean, he's a bubble guy. He's closer to 53 than he is 1 if you were mapping this out. But I didn't really take a lot of time or have a lot of strain putting him on there. I think they wanted another vet. As you said, his background with McCarthy and Rodgers is going to be a benefit. And just, he's in the sea of other rookies of Galbraith. He's not a rookie, but a second-year guy. And McCree, I just feel like Tunyon is the guy that sticks out.
Yeah, once again, it'll be interesting to see his usage in special teams, his blocking. He should, assuming he stays on this offseason roster through training camp, we expect Robert Tonyan to get a lot of burn throughout this thing, right? Because you're not going to probably play Freiermuth much, if any. Same with Darnell Washington. You're obviously going to get a long look at Nowakowski throughout this thing and a few the other backup tight ends. So put it to you this way: if Robert Tonyan ends up on my 53. Much like Roman Wilson up until this point, it'll be written in pencil.
All right, fair enough. For the offensive line, I pivoted here too, going with 8 offensive linemen, and that was certainly influenced by the study that you sort of spearheaded. I think our Joe Clark wrote up about Pittsburgh keeping 8, given Mike McCarthy's history of occasionally or often keeping 8 offensive linemen. So the 8 are Troy Fautanu, Maxi Honachor, Dylan Cook, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Spencer Anderson, Brock Hoffman, and Jennings Dunker. So no real surprises here. Now, who starts where and who plays where, all things to figure out along the way. My guess is still that Broderick Jones avoids active PUP, but will begin the year on injured reserve until he's fully cleared and is fully working. I'll assume he's on an injured list of some sort to begin the season. No 9th man replacing him, so those are the 8.
All right, so you don't think Broderick Jones will avoid active PUP, but yet start the season on IR?
Yes, that's my current assumption.
So in other words, you think they get him out there running around, then end up saying, well, we don't like where he's at. He's not ready or has some sort of a setback, because the more logical path to take with him would be to start him off on active PUP and then go from there.
My logic is that he was cleared to work in the spring on an individual basis, correct?
I mean, at least from what we've been able to gather from the pictures and reporting or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, there's video of him in a helmet hitting a blocking sled, going through individual drills. So he was clearly cleared for that. So why would he not be cleared for that in the summer?
All right, then why would you have him starting the year on IR then?
Because he would not be cleared for full contact, which is his current status.
Look, this is one of the big questions that we hope to have answered here, or will have answered right out of the chute. Right at training camp, is he on active PUP or not? If he's not, then you would expect him to be able to go more than, say, an active PUP player would be able to do at the start of training camp there. Yeah, that's an interesting kind of angle with you personally, and until I see more, I'm expecting him to start off training camp on active PUP. I think it would be obviously a positive for him if that doesn't happen. And then it does open up the whole scenario of what kind of volume can he play in any preseason. In other words, you're not expecting him to even be able to play in any preseason games, despite being able to practice in some capacity at start of training camp.
Right. And obviously, this is just based on where he's at currently. Until I know he's been fully cleared and is now healthy enough to compete and go in full practice and play in games, I'll put him on an injured list to begin. So, we're splitting hairs whether that's active PUP that becomes reserve PUP or injured reserve to return. Either way, he's on an injured list to begin the year or not on the 53-man roster.
All right, who if this team keeps 9 and it's not, and Broderick, let's say Broderick Jones for whatever reason is on active PUP or on IR, who is your 9th?
That's a good question. I've thought about it a little bit. Would it be? I mean, there's like 3 names: Stephen Jones, Jack Driscoll, Ryan McCollum. Depends a little bit on who wins the right guard job. If Brock Hoffman is at right guard and Spencer Anderson is not getting a lot of center reps, and it might be McCollum as a true backup center if Hoffman's not going to be the backup center. If Anderson wins the right guard job and Hoffman can be the next man up at center, then maybe somebody else. So kind of depends on what happens to the rest of the group, but it'd be either McCollum, maybe Driscoll.
All right. Look, I will have at the minimum these same 8. That's not a shock that you had. The question becomes, when I go to writing this thing up, will I keep a 9th or not? But as we have seen, and it's rare in Pittsburgh to see this happen, 8 offensive linemen being kept, but Mike McCarthy did do it a couple of times in Dallas, so it would be a way to clear to free up one position. That's for sure. And I think even the way you have this structured here is you have 24 guys on offense here, and by keeping 8, that essentially offensive lineman that allowed you to go that route.
Correct, it did. So 26 on defense, of course, and I'm keeping still 7 defensive linemen. They are Cam Heyward, Derek Harmon, Sebastian Joseph Day, Asezi Otomewa, Kevin Jobity Jr., little surprise here, the undrafted rookie free agent, Keanu Benton, and Y.A. Black. And so I have Otomewa and Jobity Jr. capturing those final 2 open D-line spots.
I think, look, I'm going to be keeping Heyward, Harmon, Sebastian Joseph Day, Benton, and Black. Obviously, that's 5 of the 7 that you have listed here. The big question marks, I think, come into Otomewo and Jobity Jr. I would consider at this point right now Otomewo either slightly inside the bubble or right on the bubble, and Kevin Jobity Jr. outside the bubble. It's going to be fun to watch this play out. I obviously don't think, I think something has gone horribly wrong if Lowry ends up having to make this 53-man roster, really to some degree. I think the same goes for Logan Lee, bless his heart, there. And then obviously you got Rubio, you would think is going to be at least going to get a long look here. Jobity Jr. As well. So this should be a fun, I'm with you in the total number being 7 here. When the dust clears with the defensive linemen, I think it's going to be, the fun thing is watching this thing progress as far as who number 6 and 7 might be.
Absolutely. This will be a great battle that should go down to the wire. So whether you want to put Gabriel Rubio, the 6th-round rookie, or Logan Lee, or Dean Lowry, Otomewa, and Jobity Jr., as I did, it's all going to get sorted out once these guys get to compete. And it's going to be one of the more intense positional battles on the roster. It may not be the most consequential. It certainly will not be one of the most consequential, but it will be a fierce battle from start to finish.
And then obviously if they do keep 7, at least one of those 7 is likely to show up on the inactive list to start the season.
Sure, no question about that. Edge rushers is not a complicated position, chalk as before, and should remain this way, barring injury, but injury always looming with this position group. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, Jack Sawyer are my 4.
Yeah, you're not going to get any argument out of me when it comes to those 4. I fully expect those 4 and only those 4 at the outside linebacker position.
Might get an argument with you at inside linebacker. I'm staying chalk here too, keeping 5, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, Malik Harrison, Cole Holcomb, Carson Bruner. Of course, I'll be watching if you keep Malik Harrison.
Look, I can tell you right now, I'd be a hypocrite if, as much as I've talked about Malik Harrison potentially not making this roster, I'd be a hypocrite for him to put on my 53-man roster. He will not be on my initial 53-man roster.
Confirmed. Breaking news.
Just because I feel like I felt strong, barring injury and all like that. That he'll either be, if he makes the 53-man roster, it'll be at a lower salary, or B, he won't be part of this thing.
So what do you think your inside linebacker group is going to look like? Just four, just deleting Harrison or adding a Jacoby Windman?
I'm going to have to see how the maths, because this is definitely a position group where I could see them going either 4 or 5 at. And look, I mean, without a doubt, Queen, Wilson, Holcomb, and Bruner are going to be part of this. Bruner's such a great special teams player. I know there's been some beat writers kind of call his roster spot kind of in question, though. But I mean, just from a special teams aspect alone, and look, you obviously hope that there's more there as a linebacker. It's going to be fun to watch him throughout training camp and the preseason and all like that. But man, you got to have these core special teamers that give results, and I think Carson Bruner is easily in that category. I think Cole Holcomb can give you special teams work and some some at least reliable to some degree play against the run at inside linebacker, so he'll be on there. So I'm going to have to see how the maths when it comes to 4 or 5 there, because Harrison will not be on at least my initial 53-man roster.
So, and you're going to keep just the 4 edge guys. I assume there's no 5th guy squeezing his way on.
Yeah, not from not big picture thoughts before writing it up right now.
So keeping 4 edge rushers and then potentially 4 off-ball linebackers, 8 feels light. I mean, and we'll see how the new coaching staff wants to do it, but 8 linebackers for a 3-4 scheme feels pretty light, Dave.
Sure. I get that.
All right, we'll see what it looks like when you make your prediction. At cornerback, I'm a little heavier here than I was my first time out, keeping 6 in Joey Porter Jr., Jamel Dean, Brandon Echols, Asante Samuel Jr., Dalen Everett, and number 53 on this roster, Deshaun Jameson makes it, Dave.
All right. The big question there is, can James, if they do keep 6 kind of true corners, if you will, who might be that 6? So you got a lot of different shapes and sizes, but Jameson at the very least. Going to be interesting to see him work at maybe Gunner and Vice. He's the type of guy that you would think that you wouldn't have to see on the defensive side of football, barring several injuries, throughout the season and all. But I understand why you have him wedged in there. I would imagine it's mostly because of the special teams ability there. But hopefully you did not write that one in pen.
No, certainly not in pen. Like I said, number 53 if you were mapping out 1 to 53, but a guy that showed a little something last year, has good speed, special teams ability, can play slot corner, and I think Pittsburgh just wants to have really good cornerback depth. That's evident by re-signing Samuel and drafting Dalen Everett as their first defensive draft pick this year, and Omar Khan's talked about the importance of having good cornerback depth to protect against injury, so had an extra spot to play around with here, in large part because I kept only 8 offensive linemen, and so Jameson makes it.
All right, I don't, off the top of my head, this is probably a position group I might play around with, but we'll see. At a minimum, I mean, it's obviously several on this list will be on mine here. At this
what do you think there is to play around with? I mean, do you think
Jameson and look, I do kind of wonder about Echols overall.
Okay. What is making you wonder? I know you mentioned that a couple times, not being totally assured about his spot.
I just kind of wonder what they think of him as opposed to, maybe a game day helmet and special teams, and where, I've kind of wondered about him throughout the offseason here. So I'm going to have to take look, he's obviously, you would pencil him in as inside the bubble at this point. So we'll just see how it works out on my numbers here.
And then at safety, keeping 4, Jalen Ramsey, Jaquan Brisker, Deshaun Elliott, and I have Sebastian Castro beating out Darnell Savage and rookie 7th-round pick Robert Spears-Jennings. Now, you could add a 5th year and swap out Jameson for a Savage or Spears-Jennings, another really good battle between those guys that should go down to the wire, but I think Castro can really become the up back on the punt team, and has been a really core and important special teamer, and that gets him the spot.
Yeah, I think that's something very important. We talked about this about, I don't know, what, 2 weeks ago for your up back candidates article and all like that. When putting together a 53-man roster, how many people really give that a consideration, especially on the heels that you don't have Killebrew or a couple, the couple of the guys that did that. You wouldn't think Skoranek, even though he was a candidate, you'd think he'd be better served as a gunner on the outside. So when putting this together, I think you got to give some long, hard thought about who could maybe handle that up back role, and if this team would even contemplate putting a rookie in such a role within that. So I'm going to have to dissect this and see how my maths. And I understand why you have Castro in there. Robert Spears-Jennings, could you keep him as the extra safety and do away with one of the corners, maybe specifically in Jameson, if he can show to be a good gunner? What can Darnell Savage have any sort of say within this moving through the offseason? And then obviously, to how is the injuries going to impact this thing?
Sure.
That's something that you can't predict here. But that's why, once again, I think there are a lot more different. I think there's a few more different ways than normal that maybe you could piece this thing together and make strong arguments of, let's say, spots 50 to 53 on this roster, maybe more so than the given last 2 or 3 off seasons here.
And we'll see what yours looks like in the coming days. So that is 26 on defense, 24 on offense, and then, of course, your 3 special teamers or specialists and kicker Chris Boswell, punter Cameron Johnson, still the only punter on the roster, and long snapper Christian Kuntz.
Yeah, I mean, can Cameron Johnson just keep the job? Show you enough? Feels to me he'll be battling other punters around the NFL during the preseason for the Steelers, just to look at, compare, and contrast to Cameron Johnston. But my 3 will be these exact 3 when I release mine next week.
I also put together a 17-man practice squad, 17 being because of the international exemption with edge rusher Julius Welshop. I won't read every single name here, but the 2 draft picks who did not make the 53 on the practice squad, and defensive lineman Gabriel Rubio and safety Robert Spears-Jennings. There's also Travis Homer, Lou Nichols at running back, Max Herman at receiver, Jacoby Windman, inside linebacker, Daryl Porter. I shouldn't say junior, just Daryl Porter at cornerback, and et cetera. So those are some of the notable names to make the practice squad.
All right, I imagine I'll have several of these. Mine won't probably look the same, but I imagine there'll be some duplication within my practice squad as well, too, for the 53-man roster.
What do you take umbrage most with my roster prediction, the thing, besides Malik Harrison? Just put that aside. What do you disagree with the most?
And I wouldn't say really umbrage. I would just call the guys that I would have written in pencil would be Tanyan.
Do you think you're going to keep Tunyon? Are you feeling like you're going to keep Tunyon, or just do Nowakowski as a 3rd tight end or something else?
I'm going to have to see how the maths. I mean, obviously he's going to be within. If you're to make me choose basically 56 players that I'm working with, he would be in the 56. Whether or not I can get him on the 53. I think Heidenreich obviously should be written in pencil. I think Tunyon should be written in pencil. Let's see here. Where else? Jabity Jr. and Otomewo, I think I would write in pencil right now. Malik Harrison, obviously, I would write in pencil. Deshaun Jameson, I would write in pencil. And Castro, I would write in pencil.
Dave's doing his play-in tournament over here as group of 56, and we'll see who advances. So yeah, there's certainly all those names you mentioned. Their names are not written in pen, but you got to make some decisions here. Information will change. Injuries, of course, will change things dramatically. Hopefully there aren't many injuries, but they always happen, and it certainly can change the complexity and just the look of the roster. So that's just my pre-training camp edition. Like to do that before camp so I can compare and contrast towards the final version.
Would you put Heidenreich in pencil? Would you put Tanyan in pencil?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not in pen if those are the options, pen versus pencil. I've called them basically both coin flip. I think Tanyan may be a better chance than Heidenreich, but they're both certainly going to have to still cement their case this summer.
All right. All right. Look, I think obviously we're going to duplicate a lot within this, where there might be two or
Sure.
three differences within it, but we'll discuss mine right before training camp next week, probably on Monday, I would reckon.
All right, Dave, let's continue our 90 and 30 series. We last left off with Danico Slaughter, and so we'll pivot and move towards wide receiver Brandon Smith, one of the more obscure players on the roster. So tell us about Brandon Smith, Dave.
Yeah, originally signed by the Dallas Cowboys in 2021 as a undrafted free agent out of Iowa. He signed a reserve future contract with the Steelers in January. Prior to Pittsburgh, he had spent time with the Cardinals, Jets, and Patriots, mostly as a practice squad player. He has played in 3 regular season games since entering the NFL, and all 3 were with the Jets in 2024 and 2025. He's logged just 9 offensive snaps during regular season play and 13 more on special teams. He has 0 official stats in the NFL regular season play based on, mainly because of his limited playing time. Had 91 catches in college at Iowa for a little over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns in 39 games over 4 seasons. Mainly was used as an outside wide receiver throughout his college career. 6'1" 3/8", 218 pounds, some long arms on him, 34.25-inch arms, nice size hands. 4.64 40-yard dash at his pro day. Look, I think he's done a great job of keeping himself tied to the NFL as mainly a practice squad player since 2021. It goes without saying he's going to have a tough road ahead of him this summer when it comes to sticking in Pittsburgh once the preseason concludes. I think chances of making the 53-man roster a lot would have to happen. You just don't see that happening here. I think what he'll be doing is battling for a practice squad spot throughout training camp in the preseason. Going to be a lot of competition when it comes to that. We'll have to watch him very closely on special teams to see if he can show some plus there. That'll be easier said than done, I think, because he never really shown himself to be a special teams asset all the way back to his college career. Has played very few snaps in that phase of the game overall. So let's assume that he can keep his 91-man roster spot throughout the first few weeks of training camp. And that's a big assumption based on the way things get shuffled up here. I think we'll see him get maybe some decent playing time during the Steelers preseason games if he can hold on that long there. So definitely outside the bubble player, far outside the 53-man roster bubble. And the question is can he show anything as a wide receiver / special teams player and hold on to his roster spot throughout the offseason to give himself a good shot at being a practice squad player?
Yeah, just 18 total special team snaps over the last 2 preseasons, and so we're going to have to see more from Smith in that regard. It just may be one of those things, like you said, if injuries pile up at another position, he may be one of the first guys to go. So a little bit of NFL experience helps. He was with McCarthy in Dallas back in that 2021 season, so that helps too, but still a really tough path forward for Braden Smith.
Really is.
He's got some good explosion, though, some good leaping ability, and so can he kind of use that with some good size to make some combative catch moments? If he can do that, then that's going to be good for him.
All right, agreed.
All right, Dave, let's move on now to next on the list. That is one rookie, Robert Spears-Jennings, we just talked about. So trying to make the team here, battling Sebastian Castro and Darnell Savage, and just the mathing, the theme of the day here, the numbers game. Can he get on the 53-man roster? He has speed, some hit power, physicality. Can he be more than just a straight line guy? Has a special teams background, which is a plus, but still a good battle ahead.
Yeah, the good news is he found his way to get drafted this year by the Steelers. Was the team's 9th selection in this year's draft class, and for his college career at Oklahoma, 178 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 4 passes defense, and 5 forced fumbles in 47 total games that he played in. Showed himself to be a very versatile safety throughout his college career, playing both free and strong positions. Played just over 1,500 total defensive snaps during his college career, so kind of like Dalen Everett Herbert, logged a lot of defensive snaps throughout his college career, logged a lot of playing time on special teams as well throughout his college career. He played nearly 500 special team snaps over 4 college seasons. He's going to need that experience to lean on here moving forward into the offseason. Prior to the combine, he was a East-West Shrine Bowl participant, so they thought highly enough of him to invite him to that All-Star game. Look, late round draft pick, no guarantees come with that. The Steelers also have a deep and experienced depth chart at the safety position ahead of training camp getting underway. You got guys like Castro, you got guys like Savage, you got a unique player in Henderson, Jack Henderson in that room as well too. His path to the 53-man roster this summer feels like it's going to come through Danny Crossman's paperwork and on his desk. He really needs to show himself. He needs to show that he can be this team's best gunner opposite Ben Skoranek, it feels like, and a vice man, if you will, on the punt units. And based on his tape in college, that doesn't seem like it's too tall of a task of him overall. It obviously won't hurt if he made several defensive plays throughout training camp and the preseason. So this is a guy that I'm excited to see. Obviously, play a lot during the 3 preseason games. I think he's got a nice skill set to work with, at least for the long haul here. Probably more likely open to regular season on the team's practice squad, more so than the 53-man roster. But that analysis aside, 53-man roster spot feels it's at least attainable or plausible for him
Sure.
this summer. But special teams, I think, is going to play a big part in that. We need to be talking about him. Obviously, we hope making a lot of tackles as a gunner, or at the very least being a guy that easily gets off vices and down the field and pinning guys to make fair catches, those sort of things there. If we're not talking about Spears-Jennings in his special play during the preseason, it's going to be hard to make an argument for him to make the 53-man roster.
He has the speed. I know Joe Witt Jr., the DB's coach, talked about that. You can't teach speed. The guy ran, 4.32 at the combine. And so there's a hit power speed component where he can cover a lot of grass, and that's attractive. But can he break down? Can he change directions? Can he be consistent, be good with his tackling technique? That'll be all things to watch. Will he play more free safety, strong safety? What is the alignment? We'll have to be watchful for that as well. But certainly has a chance, like Castro, to compete. Will he be a gunner? He certainly could be. I think maybe he fits more of a wing, kind of has the size there to play the wing on the punt team, but I'm splitting hairs here either way. Has to make a mark on special teams because Pittsburgh obviously has no intentions without a bunch of injuries piling up to play this guy on defense.
Right, exactly.
But should get a lot of preseason work at safety along with Castro because you have I think you have 7 safeties on the roster right now, but Ramsey's not going to play a lot. How much is Brisker going to play? Elliott, those guys don't need a ton of burn. And when I talked to those Packers and Cowboys reporters, they talked about the starters don't typically play a lot in the preseason, even, guys like Elliott, not just the Rodgers and the stars of the world. So you got, who do you have? Savage is going to see a good amount of time. You have Castro, you have Spears-Jennings, you have Jack Henderson. That's 4 guys there. They're going to see a ton of action.
Absolutely. Hopefully he stays healthy and we don't have like a Dante Kent situation where, injury prevents him from playing any, so keep your fingers crossed because if he does stay healthy, we should see him on the field a lot during the 3 preseason games.
Would you give Spears-Jennings or Castro the edge if you had to pick one right now? It's close. It's flipping a coin.
Yeah,
I understand.
But I do like your angle of the up back for Castro.
Okay.
And he look, if he's shown to be anything throughout his college career and limited time we've seen him in the NFL, physicality and ability to play on special teams. So you would expect to continue to see that. And Robert Spears Jr. Or Robert Spears-Jennings is going to have to show he can function as a gunner, I think. So totally different there.
Sure. All right. Next on the list is offensive lineman Lorenzo Thompson, another guy like a Brandon Smith, not well known, trying to make the team and probably more likely just make the practice squad. He's out of Rhode Island, was experienced there. He's played some tackle, he's played some guard, lacks ideal length to play tackle. So we'll see exactly where Pittsburgh puts him. That'll be, I think, one interesting element of training camp. So that'll be something to watch when we talk about third team offensive linemen. But your thoughts on Lorenzo Thompson?
Who is that? Yeah, originally signed by the Cleveland Browns in 2024, undrafted free agent out of Rhode Island, signed a reserve futures contract with the Steelers in January. He spent the entire 2024 season on the Browns practice squad. Cleveland then re-signed him to reserve futures contract after the 2024 season ended. After sticking with the Browns throughout training camp and preseason last year, he was waived and he failed to even latch on with another team last season, even as a practice squad guy. So that's not a great recent history coming out of last year's training camp and the preseason. Now, during his 2 preseason stints with the Browns, he logged playing time at both left tackle and left guard throughout his college career. However, he mostly played left tackle. He finished his college career with 37 consecutive starts and nearly 2,500 offensive snaps at Rhode Island there. So at his pro day, measured in fine until you got to the arms, I think, overall. And really his arms aren't all that short, just probably a little bit shorter what you'd like. 6'6", 307 pounds, 33-inch arms, nice size hands, 9 5/8 inch. Look, I think the most interesting aspect with him when it comes to training camp, at the start of training camp and the preseason, is do they think of him any as a left guard as opposed to left tackle? We expect to see him on the left side in some capacity. My bet is that we'll see him mainly at left tackle throughout training camp and the preseason. Maybe the Steelers give him a cup of coffee or two at left guard to just see if there's anything to work with there. Obviously, I mean, we're already talking about this team potentially keeping 8 offensive linemen. 9, it feels like, would be the maximum, barring a lot of injuries. There's just no way he's going to make the 53-man roster. But can he show you anything maybe like he showed the Cleveland Browns a couple of years ago to warrant at least keeping him on the practice squad? That's going to be the biggest question with him. I doubt we'll see him on the right side. I'm not going to completely rule that out, but I would expect to see him once again mainly at left tackle, maybe a little bit at left guard, and he's a back of the depth chart kind of player. So him keeping his 91-man roster spot might be a little bit difficult, specifically if the lines get short at other positions here, because the Steelers got a lot of offensive linemen, it feels like, on their training camp roster here. And how much, if Broderick Jones is ready to go at the start of camp, how will that play into it
Sure.
as well, too, specifically if they think of Thompson as a tackle. So, more than anything, if we get to the preseason, we're still talking about him. We're going to be charting where he lines up at.
No question. And frankly, if he can play some guard and tackle, that'll be good because McCarthy loves versatility. Marquand's talked about that too. So having that flexibility is a plus. Pittsburgh, I counted last night, has 15 offensive linemen on their 91-man roster, which is the norm. If Jones is not working in full, then you got 14 guys. So that should keep Thompson around for those snaps. So I think he'll end up playing tackle because I think they have enough at guard and interior positions. I mean, if Jones is not working in full, your first team tackles, let's just say it's Fautanu and Cook. Second team, Acrisure, and I guess it'd be, Jack Driscoll, right? Is there anybody else? Am I missing anybody, any obvious name? And then third team tackle almost would have to be Thompson, because what other 2 guys could you put in there? I mean, it's going to be Thompson.
What could Stephen Jones factor into that any?
Sure. I mean, he's been more right tackle, so he's probably your right tackle. But I'm saying, like, if you said Thompson's going to play guard, who would be the 2 tackles for your third team? It would be Stephen Jones, and I'm not sure unless somebody's going to double dip, or like Driscoll's going to then just take third team left tackle reps too. Maybe you do that. But my guess, and shockingly, no beat writers talked about where Lorenzo Thompson is aligned in the spring, so I don't know what that has looked like. But I'm going to guess Thompson will open up this summer in training camp at tackle, and to go from there.
All right. After the first week of training camp, we ought to have a good listing by you of what the line rotations have been, right?
Sure, even that first couple days, we'll be able to note that. pretty quickly. Just a quick note, we did have a scouting report on Thompson whenever he came out of the draft, so he was on our radar in 2024. Ross McCorkle wrote the report. We love our small school week around here. Ross wrote, quote, his fundamentals as a pass-protecting tackle are good, and he has great instincts for using his punch and latching onto defenders. He can cover a lot of ground in his pass sets and does a great job against speed rushers in general. He is a little less polished moving forward, often playing with narrow feet and leaning too far out in front of a center of gravity. So sounds like a decent athlete, good feet, can move, but just has to be more technical and really sit in his stance.
All right. We should get a pretty decent look at him, assuming he's on the preseason roster.
No question. Next on the list, the name we've talked about a little bit today, Robert Tonyan, the veteran tight end, reuniting with Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy, an older player, far removed from his 2020 11 touchdown season, but trying to vie for the number 3 tight end spot, Dave.
All right, he managed to play in all 17 games last season with the Chiefs on his way to registering 1 reception for 1 yard as part of him playing 133 total offensive snaps. He also logged 108 more on special teams, and he registered 1 tackle in that phase of the game last season. Originally entered the draft in 2017, or entered the NFL in 2017 as an undrafted free agent with the Lions out of Indiana State. Obviously spent a lot of his NFL career with Green Bay, has since been with the Bears, the Vikings, and the Chiefs. He has registered 149 receptions for 1,550 yards and 17 touchdowns. 11 of those touchdowns, I think he was part of him catching 52 passes in his best NFL season to date, which came back in 2020. Obviously, teammates with Aaron Rodgers during his career in Green Bay. While he has logged a fair amount of special team snaps over the course of his career, he has just 4 total tackles in that phase of the game. He has logged, I counted 777 total regular season snaps in the NFL as a special teams player to go along with nearly 2,400 on offense. Look, it's not hard after the fact. I think it was a little bit surprised that it, at least getting signed to the offseason 91-man roster initially, but when you look back at the history of him playing with Rodgers and Mike McCarthy, obviously made his addition a lot more understandable. His path to the 53-man roster this summer is an interesting one, in my opinion, especially with the fact that he'll likely need to hope the Steelers keep 4 tight ends in total, assuming you want to log in Noah Kowski as part of tight end / fullback there, showing that he can be a more of a special teams asset and a more reliable run blocker during camp and the preseason, in my opinion, feels like a must. He's never been considered a top-notch player in either of those phases of his game, in my opinion. That the fact that Tonyan has played for McCarthy's offenses for a good chunk of his career should allow for him to help, at the minimum, teach it to the other tight ends in his position group room. Tonyan probably has around a 50% chance of making the 53-man roster where I sit right now. His chances would likely improve if any of the other tight ends on the depth chart were to get injured. Obviously during the summer. Should he ultimately fail to make the 53-man roster, you would think there would be a good chance that he'd be asked to become a member of the practice squad should another team not want to sign him either to their 53-man roster or practice squad. So I think it's important to watch, obviously, the health of the tight end room moving forward through the summer and how he functions on special teams and as a run blocker during the preseason. I would imagine going to get some pretty good burn during the preseason.
Yeah, Dave, really just what we talked about earlier. I think Tonyan will get a good amount of burn, probably not as much needed as those younger guys like Bell and Galbraith and McCree, just because Tonyan is, 32 and familiar with the system and the offense. There's not a lot to discover or evaluate with Tonyan in terms of what his overall skill set is, but how much can he block? Can he give anything on special teams? I just feel like they want a veteran option there, and that's probably going to give Tonyan the edge.
All right. Like I said, I view him as a 50-50 player right now.
All right, fair enough. Do you think if he loses his spot, it'll be because of Nowakowski just taking over those duties, or could he lose out to one of those young guys we mentioned?
Look, I think it all comes into play with roster construction. Might they need the ninth offensive line spot? I think he's just one of those guys that it might come down to overall roster construction.
Yeah, I could see him, not to get too weedy, being one of those yo-yo players where on the initial cut downs on the 30th, he gets cut and they bring him back a day later because he's a veteran. He'll just, circle right on back. So they need to kind of do some maneuvering with IR guys, although they can do the IR guys initially, two of them at cut downs. I could see him kind of yo-yo the roster.
Yeah, that's a good point as well too.
All right, next on the list is running back Jaylen Warren, and coming off a pretty productive 2025 season, what fell just short of 1,000 yards. Now in this timeshare committee with Rico Dowdle, and so the question will be how that division of labor gets divvied up, and will Warren be 1A or Dowdle be 1A, and what Warren's role will be and fit into this offense, Dave.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to tell listeners anything that they don't know about Warren at this point. Obviously, he should be on the 53-man roster as part of a duo that will include Rico Dowdle, who was signed during the offseason. The usage of Warren and Dowdle throughout the 2026 regular season figures to be a committee of some sorts or means, and thus we could see a hot hand situation occurring with these two running backs. We're just going to have to watch and see how it goes. In my opinion, Warren is a better overall pass protector of him and Dowdle. Additionally, Warren is a more accomplished pass catcher so far out of the backfield in Dowdle. So could that be wind up playing a little bit more into the hands of Warren being out there on third downs more times than Dowdle? I think so. Both these running backs, both Warren and Dowdle, have a history of some short yardage and goal line usage, so we could see them splitting those kind of carries throughout the season. Look, Warren's not going to log a lot of special teams playing time throughout the season. You could potentially see him out there on kickoffs as a deep player once again that has the ability to return in those situations. Should they, let's say, kick away from Weegen, unless Dowdle misses a chunk of playing time due to health-related stuff, it is hard to see Warren rushing for 1,000 yards this season. However, I think there is a realistic chance Warren could hit 1,000 total yards from scrimmage, specifically because of his ability in the passing game and the kind of usage that we expect him to get as a running back position. And if he ends up getting the lion's share of third down reps along the way. So the biggest question when it comes to Warren / Dowdle is the usage on a week-to-week basis and even a down-to-down basis, and maybe even on a series-to-series basis as far as how the split goes. In my opinion, it's hard to see, barring injuries to the room, Warren topping 475 offensive snaps, which would probably be around anywhere between 45 to 50, 52% of the overall offensive snaps played. We're just going to have to see how the splits goes. Will we see hot hand? And obviously, will any of Dowdle or Warren miss any time because of an injury or two?
Yeah, I mean, projecting and predicting the numbers is tough to do, and it's going to probably ebb and flow. We've talked about that a good bit. Dowdle's career has kind of been high marked by a lot of highs and big performances, followed by some lows and quieter showings. I'm with you. I think Warren will not take over, but have a bulk of the third down duty, the pass pro duty, which has been his role throughout his career, especially how he began getting an offensive role his rookie season, kind of eating into Najee Harris's snaps, but I want to see, is this guy more explosive? I think he's always had burst, but can he have some of that long speed? And he dropped weight. He talked about to reporters getting down to, I think, 207, which was his pre-draft, pro day weight. And so maybe a little more juice, but fun player, high energy, all out, bowling ball, man. It's so hard to tackle this guy, that lower center of gravity, the style in which he plays with. You love watching his training videos and even posting some of those, Dave, in his never takes his helmet off. In training camp practice, helmet on all the time. In training, in the offseason, helmet on, just kind of the hallmark. Jaylen Warren, true chip on his shoulder kind of guy. And so truly a really fun player to watch, a clear success story. So, will he get to I'll over under you on this date to put one number to it. 1,300 yards from scrimmage in 2026. Last year, Warren came in at 1,291, so just fell short. So over under 1,300.
I would take the under. It feels like I like his chances of hitting 1,000. I think hit 1,300 might be a little bit too far.
He rushed for 958 last year. Will he come in under that mark
I
this
think he'll
year?
come in
Yeah.
under that mark.
I think it's so hard to predict, and obviously one injury to Dowdle can really change this thing in a hurry. Granted, the same can be said about Warren. He's only missed 4 games in his career. He's been really durable in a timeshare, but not a lead guy, but still for the running back position and the violent play style that he has, he's a really tough dude. So I'll lean the under right now, but a good player, and I hope the new coaching staff realizes that, and they should know that pretty quickly.
Look, here's the thing with him. That guy plays every NFL snap like it might be his last. And give
Definitely.
me as many of those players as you can.
Absolutely.
A guy that you root for. Once again, the big question is just usage here, and I think that's on a lot of listeners' minds here as we get closer to the start of training camp.
Usage can apply to the next man on the list, tight end Darnell Washington, coming off his best season in 2025, but probably still some meat left on that bone, as you would like to say. Dave, a little less meat on the bones of Darnell Washington this year. At least that's the goal. He's going to apparently get down to 300 pounds as his target weight for the start of training camp. And so still impossibly large human for the tight end position, but Darnell Washington, Pittsburgh's new coaching staff, should recognize his value too.
Look, the best thing, this is a Smithless team this offseason, meaning Arthur Smith and Jonnu Smith are no longer with this team. That's a big plus, it feels like, when it comes to Darnell Washington, because you would think he's now, gave him the big contract and all. Expect to have somewhat of a bigger role in this offense in 2026 with Mike McCarthy calling the shots. He'll likely enter the 2020 2026 season a bit trimmer when it comes to his weight. I don't want to get into semantics of is that going to be 285? Is that going to be 300? I think just the onus is on him to be a little lighter than he's been. So we'll have to see how that works out. The Steelers are expected to obviously, at least we think, use more 11 personnel groupings with McCarthy running the offense. You would think Washington still figures to see a decent amount of playing time when there's only one tight end on the field. Obviously, he should be a part of any 2 or 3 tight end groupings on the field whenever that happens throughout the season. His utilization as a pass target did increase some in 2025. You would expect to play maybe a bigger role in the run department once again in 2026. We might see him get a few more red zone targets in 2026. He's been underutilized in that area of the field, dating all the way back to his college career at Georgia. Now, obviously, Georgia had a lot of weapons that they could use down in that area, but I think we might see maybe a handful more targets in that area in 2026. Barring Pat Freiermuth missing time in 2026 because of an injury, it's hard to imagine, in my opinion, Washington registering more than 40 receptions this season. I think he could hit that number, could at least around 3 touchdown receptions, I think feels realistic in 2026, especially if he gets a few more red zone targets. While we'll see him playing, we'll still likely see him playing some on special teams. He might not have the same type of total snaps in that phase of the game as he did in 2025. And as we had kind of a conversation a few episodes ago, I think losing Washington for any amount of time during the 2026 season would be very detrimental to this offense, and mainly because of what he offers in the way of the run blocking department. I think we both agree, arguably one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL at this stage of his career. And I think the big question with him is how much more involved can you get him in the passing game? Can we see him take even yet another step forward in the run blocking department? And will we see him out there in his fair share of 11 personnel groupings?
It's just going to be interesting to watch Pittsburgh balance it all. The increase in 11 personnel, although removing Jonnu Smith does also open up some lanes. So balancing that, balancing McCarthy does not have a great history of getting two tight ends the ball a lot in a single season, balancing the target share that'll be reduced from the loss of Kenneth Gainwell in the short passing game, but then applied to new receivers like Michael Pittman Jr. and Jeremy Bernard, just working all of that, getting Frymouth numbers back to form. I'm not sure how it's all going to shake out, but I think Washington is such a talented player and unique player, obviously, and what he offers as a blocker first is still really remarkable. And I would just say it's not even just among the best blockers, but the best blocking tight end in football. And I think that's improved. His pass protection has improved a ton throughout his NFL career. So I'm blocking, I think, has gotten better too. So a little bit of drop weight is fine, a little more explosive, a little less weight on the knees. 300 pounds seems just right. But yeah, you're paying these tight ends pretty good money, and Frymouth and Washington getting his extension, of course, this offseason. And so you got to use these guys, and just trying to balance all that will be something I'll be watching for very closely.
All right, let's play. Let's make a deal. You can
Okay.
have behind curtain number one here, and that's Darnell Washington, 39 receptions, 490 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the 2026 season. Are you taking it, or are you taking your chances behind with Darnell Washington, unknown, behind curtain number two?
Spit that line back to me. You said how many receptions?
39
39.
for 490 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, take that all day,
All right, I would as well too.
because that's a clear upgrade over last year's numbers, which were already ascending.
Okay.
All right, so anything to watch for, and he should be cleared. He worked on the spring off the broken arm last year, so that was the sour note to the end. It didn't happen with the playoff game, which was notable. I don't think Pittsburgh beats Houston because of that, but that was certainly a late season loss.
Right, and they lost him in that Week 17 game against Cleveland. About halfway through or so, and then he obviously went on IR, and they did not have him for the finale against Baltimore, nor did they have him against the Texans in the playoffs.
All right, Dave, that's going to wrap up this edition of 90 and 30. I think we'll finish out the list, the final 7, on Friday.
Yeah, we should have some fun names to talk about. TJ Watt, Julius Welshaw, Levi Wentz, Caden Weegan, Peyton Wilson, Roman Wilson, and rounding out our discussion should be Jacoby Windman on Friday.
And I know you just wrote the last one. Windman went up on the site earlier today, so congratulations. That is a novel you have written, Dave, but I think we're all much smarter and more prepared for the start of training camp because of your efforts.
I think I am a lot smarter because of it as well, too. It's one of the benefits of doing this, makes you dive deeper into them. So hopefully people have enjoyed that series that we will round out talking about on Friday.
All right, Dave, let's get to any reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's see here. I think we have just one, and it's from our buddy George O'Dodery from Northeastern University in Boston. George has been a long time listener, emailer of the show. It's always good to hear from him. He says, "Dear Dave and Alex, as I put on my black and gold colored glasses, I am preparing for another great season. My preparation primarily involves listening to back episodes of your podcast and reading articles on the website. From this study, I have came away with the surprising conclusion that everyone is down on 3 Steelers: Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, and Jaylen Warren. As an elder Steeler fan, I have never understood how anyone could think that Roger Staubach was better than Terry Bradshaw. I similarly think this about Cam Heyward being better than, say, Dexter Lawrence, TJ Watt being better than Myles Garrett, and Jaylen Warren being better than Rico Dowdle. Don't get me wrong, I will be rooting for Dowdle, but I would rather see him backing up Warren than the other way around. As for Watt, thanks to a misplaced needle, I can agree to the suggestion that Garrett had a better season than Watt. However, before last season, I contend Watt consistently has had more productive seasons. I would like to suggest the same for Warren over Dowdle and struggle to find a single stat other than weight where Lawrence compares with Heyward. I get in the case of Lawrence, there is the potential of youth, but the 36-year-old Heyward simply outplayed Lawrence last year. All right. So, George says from basically listening to the podcast and reading the website that he's come away with the conclusion that everyone is down on Heyward, Watt, and Warren. All right, I will push back in the fact that I think Cam Heyward, when it comes to Alex and I, we we've maintained bullishness more so, I think, than the average Steelers fan when it comes to Heyward. I think what he's done is remarkable over the last 2 or 3 seasons here with him. We just at the top of the show talked about we can't believe Hayward's being snubbed from the top 100 list, or at least it seems like this year. So I think Heyward can put up. I don't know what we talked about. If he stays healthy and plays, I don't know, 75% of snaps, I think we could see an on par season for Cam Heyward in 2026. And with the only thing being, can he get the sacks? Over 5 or 6, I think would be the biggest question with him. Not that he can't. I just think there's a lot of sacks to go around between a lot of players overall. So I would say I don't think that we've been down on Heyward, have we?
No, my interpretation of that comment wasn't about our commentary, but us talking about all the times Heyward has been snubbed on the various lists, including the one we
Okay.
talked about today, likely to miss the NFL top 100, and CD Lamb was 55. They just revealed that. And I mean, Cam Heyward, I'd be shocked if he's ahead of CD Lamb on a player-led list. And so I don't know for sure, but that's my sense, is just reading about all the Heyward snubbed on this list, Heyward ranked lowly is probably where that is coming from, more so than what we have said. I mean, Lawrence was a good player. He was hurt last year, so it's hard to kind of compare his last season to Hayward's healthy last season. But I get the overall sentiment, and I appreciate the optimism. And I think all three of those guys that they talked about, the reader talked about, George, was it right? George,
Yeah,
was
George,
the
your brother
reader?
George.
I get that. With Watt, obviously disappointing year last year, has a lot to prove. The pressure is on him to go out there and prove it and show he's worth that investment. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. I may be a little too stubborn to a fault about it, but I'll bet on stars. I'll believe in star players. If they can bounce back, they're wired that way. They know what the peak looks like. They can get back there. Watt's days of 20 sack seasons almost certainly are going to be over, but I think he can
Can
bounce
he
back.
hit 15 though? Then that's the big question, I think.
Sure, I think it's certainly possible. I think he can double his sack total. I think he can certainly get into a dozen, 13 sacks or so and kind of feel like TJ Watt again.
I think the big question this year is, can TJ Watt at least get himself back in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year? Even though he probably won't be the favorite come the end of it, can he at least get himself back in where, you got to consider Watt,
Yeah, be in that top 5 list of the best odds, and he might be number 4, number 5. But yeah, if he can do that, then you're probably back to typical TJ Watt.
All right, Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren has just been Jaylen Warren, and I think you expect more of Jaylen Warren. I think as we went over in the 90 and 30 series that we just wrapped up talking about there, usage, I think Alex and I agreed that he's probably the guy that needs to be out there on third downs. And he's obviously going to get work on first and second downs. Is it going to be a hot hand situation? We'll see. One of the biggest things, and look, this has just been the running game in general in Pittsburgh, is the Steelers haven't had that guy that breaks off those 20-yard runs. Now, Najee Harris surprised us a few years ago, I think, with the number that he put up, but I don't think you're going to put Jaylen Warren or Rico Dowdle in, the Gibbs or the Derrick Henrys, as far as those guys that, man, you can count on 10 runs of 20 yards or longer for a season.
What do you think Warren ranks across all NFL running backs? I know that's a big question. I don't want us to go through every single running back here to close out the show, but do you think, just gut check, top 20 running back, top 25, something else?
I mean, and I'm not looking at him here. I
Sure.
feel like I would easily put Warren in a top 20 list that I'm building.
Easily. Yeah, but what do you think on that top 20 list? Closer to 20 or higher? If I said, is he a top 15 running back, how would you feel about that?
I would say 15 to 20, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Yeah, I probably would say in the 20, late teens is probably where he's at. And Dowdle, I still haven't watched enough of Dowdle's whole career arc to probably properly have a good feel of where to rank him.
All right, George, appreciate the food for thought email there. Appreciate you checking in there as well too. That's all I got as far as emails, I think, in the box today, Alex. So we can
All
start
right.
wrapping it up here.
Should note here that we're on contract watch for Pittsburgh, but also what's working around Pittsburgh. The Cardinals report today, and still no deal for Jacoby Brissett, but also not Carson Beck. That may change by the time people listen to this. Jeremy Fowler reporting a short time ago. Raiders fourth-round pick Jamar McCoy expected to sign his contract today. Raiders report on Thursday. Would expect Fernando Mendoza to get his deal done by then too. And so hopefully these dominoes should fall shortly to get Drew Aller signed, sealed, and delivered.
So officially, he's still one of 6 unsigned, right? And one of 4 quarterbacks, correct?
Correct. McCoy apparently going to sign today. Not official yet, but that should take it down to 5. Beck, the Cardinals going to start training camp without Beck signed. I mean, that'd be kind of a little surprising, but we shall see.
Yeah, we got a little less than 1 week for the Steelers to get it figured out with Aller. So we will, everybody stay tuned to that. Okay, in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Make sure you read his latest 53-man roster that we covered today, prediction. And I'll have mine early next week for us to discuss as well, too. Follow him at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Alex and I will be back on Friday, finishing out my 90 and 30 series, having discussions about that and whatever else pops up in the meantime. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.